Hey warrior, yes you, the person who clicked on this video because something inside you knows there's more to life than being tossed around like a leaf who crosses your path. You're tired every set, every emotion in the wind by back, every person of feeling powerless. You're tired of your day being ruined by things that shouldn't matter. You're tired of reacting instead of responding, of being weak instead of strong, of letting life happen to you instead of making life happen for you. Most people live their entire lives as prisoners to their own reactions. Someone cuts them off in traffic and their whole morning is destroyed. A coworker makes a snide comment and they carry that anger for hours. They get bad news and they spiral into a mental breakdown that lasts for days. They let external circumstances control their internal state like they're some kind of emotional puppet dancing to whatever tune the world decides to play. But there's a different way to live. A way that transforms you from a victim of circumstances into a master of your own experience. A way that gives you unshakable power no matter what chaos swirls around you. The ancient Stoics discovered this secret over 2,000 years ago, and it's more relevant today than ever before. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the Roman Empire, wrote these words in his private journal. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He wasn't speaking to his subjects or trying to impress anyone. He was reminding himself of the most important truth he'd learned. The Emperor of Rome, who could command armies and rule nations, knew that his greatest power wasn't over others, it was over himself. Right now, as you're listening to this, you're making a choice. Every second of every day, you're choosing how to respond to what's happening around you. Most people don't realize they're making this choice because they react so fast it feels automatic. But that reaction, that split second between what happens to you and how you respond, that's where your freedom lives, that's where your power lives. Today I'm going to show you exactly how to master that space. How to transform from someone who gets triggered by everything into someone who remains calm under pressure. How to go from being reactive to being responsive. How to develop what the Stoics called the ultimate superpower, complete control over your reactions. This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending you don't feel anything. This is about becoming so strong internally that external events lose their power to control you. It's about developing the kind of unshakable confidence that comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you'll handle it with wisdom and strength. Drop this in the comments if you're ready to take control. I choose my reactions. I control my life. Like this video, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe because we're building an army of people who refuse to be victims of their circumstances. The first thing you need to understand is that most people have this completely backwards. They think their emotions are caused by what happens to them. Bad thing happens, they feel bad. Good thing happens, they feel good. They live their lives like emotional ping-pong balls bouncing back and forth based on whatever hits them. But the Stoics discovered something revolutionary. Your emotions aren't caused by events. They're caused by your thoughts about events. Epictetus, who went from being a slave to becoming one of the greatest philosophers in history, taught this fundamental truth. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Think about this for a moment. Two people can experience the exact same event and have completely different emotional responses. One person gets fired from their job and sees it as a catastrophe that ruins their life. Another person gets fired from the same job and sees it as an opportunity to find something better. Same event, different thoughts, different emotions, different outcomes. This means your emotional state isn't determined by your circumstances. It's determined by how you interpret your circumstances. And here's the life-changing part. You get to choose how you interpret everything that happens to you. Most people never realize they have this choice because they've been conditioned to react automatically. Something happens, they immediately jump to a judgment about whether it's good or bad, and then they feel whatever emotion matches that judgment. But there's a gap between what happens and your judgment about it, and in that gap lies your freedom. The Stoics called this gap the discipline of perception. It's the ability to see things as they actually are instead of through the filter of your emotions, fears, and assumptions. When you master this discipline, you realize that most of the things you think are problems aren't actually problems at all. They're just events that you've chosen to interpret as problems. Let me give you an example. You're walking down the street and someone you know walks right past you without saying hello. Immediately your mind starts spinning. They must be mad at me. What did I do wrong? Maybe they don't like me anymore. This is terrible. But wait, what actually happened? Someone walked past you without speaking. That's it. That's all that happened. Everything else, all the drama and emotion and story about what it means, that came from you. You created that suffering in your own mind. A Stoic would see this situation completely differently. They might think, that person walked past without speaking. Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe they were lost in thought. Maybe they're dealing with something difficult. Maybe they're in a hurry. I don't know why they didn't speak, and I don't need to make up a story about it. See the difference? Same event, but one interpretation creates suffering and the other creates peace. You get to choose which interpretation you use. This is what the ancient Stoics meant when they said that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Most of our pain doesn't happen to us. It comes from what actually stories we tell ourselves about what happens to us. But here's where most people get stuck. They think this means they should try to think positive thoughts about everything. That's not what Stoicism teaches. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending bad things don't happen. This is about seeing things clearly without adding unnecessary emotional genuine drama. When only difficult happens, a Stoic doesn't pretend it's good. They acknowledge that it's challenging while maintaining their inner strength. They ask themselves, what can I learn from this? How can I grow stronger? What's within my control in this situation? The key is learning to separate what's actually happening from your emotional reaction to what's happening. When you can do this, you discover that you're much more resilient than you thought. You realize that most situations aren't as bad as your initial emotional reaction makes them seem. This takes practice. Your brain has been conditioned to react automatically for years, maybe decades. Changing this pattern doesn't happen overnight. But every time you catch yourself in the middle of an emotional reaction and pause to examine what's actually happening versus what story you're telling yourself about it, you get a little bit stronger. The Stoics had a daily practice for developing this skill. Every morning they would prepare their minds for whatever the day might bring. They would remind themselves that they might encounter difficult people, unexpected problems, or disappointing news. But instead of dreading these possibilities, they would prepare to respond with wisdom and strength. This isn't pessimism. This is preparation. When you mentally rehearse handling challenges before they happen, you're much more likely to respond well when they actually occur. You've already practiced staying calm under pressure in your mind, so when pressure comes, you're ready. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Conf this isn't yourself to the present," one of the most powerful practices for controlling your reactions. Most emotional suffering comes from either regret about the past or anxiety about the future. But right now, in this present moment, you're probably fine. Your phone works. You have air to breathe. You have a roof over your head. You have access to information and entertainment that would have seemed magical to people just a century ago. Right here, right now, you're okay. It's only when your mind starts traveling to the past or future that problems multiply. The present moment is where your power lives. It's the only place where you can actually take action. It's the only time that's real. Everything else is just thought. When you learn to anchor yourself in the present moment, something extraordinary happens. The endless chatter in your mind begins to quiet down. The constant worry about what might happen tomorrow or what went wrong yesterday starts to fade. You discover a kind of peace that doesn't depend on your circumstances being perfect. But here's what separates the truly powerful from everyone else. They don't just control their reactions to big dramatic events. They master their responses to the small daily irritations that slowly drain most people's energy and happiness. The long line at the grocery store, the slow internet connection, the person who doesn't text back right away, the traffic jam that makes them 5 minutes late. These tiny moments are where your real strength is built or destroyed. Anyone can stay calm during the good times. But can you maintain your inner peace when the barista gets your order wrong for the 3rd time this week? Can you respond with grace when your boss criticizes you in front of your colleagues? Can you keep your composure when your plans fall apart at the last minute? The Stoics understood that life is essentially a series of tests. Every day presents you with opportunities to practice virtue or fall back into old patterns of weakness. Every interaction is a chance to demonstrate wisdom, courage, justice, and self-discipline, or to react with anger, fear, selfishness, and impulsiveness. Most people fail these daily tests because they're not even aware they're taking them. They react automatically to every stimulus like trained animals. Someone honks their horn, they get angry. Someone disagrees with their opinion, they get defensive. Someone achieves something they want, they get jealous. They live their lives in a constant state of emotional reactivity, bouncing from one feeling to another based on whatever random events they encounter. But when you understand that every moment is an opportunity to practice strength, everything changes. That person who cuts in front of you in line becomes your teacher in patience. That criticism from your colleague becomes practice in maintaining confidence despite external judgment. That unexpected setback becomes training in resilience and adaptability. This is what the Stoics called turning obstacles into opportunities. They didn't just endure difficulties, they transformed them into advantages. They used every challenge as raw material for building character. They understood that strength isn't built during easy times, it's forged in the fire of adversity. Seneca, who was one of Rome's wealthiest men and advisor to emperors, deliberately practiced voluntary hardship to prepare himself for whatever life might bring. He would sleep on the floor, eat simple food, wear plain clothes, not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could be happy regardless of his external conditions. This practice gave him unshakable confidence. He knew that even if he lost everything, his wealth, his status, his comfort, he would still be okay because his happiness didn't depend on those things. His peace came from within, not from his circumstances. You can develop this same kind of internal strength. Start small. The next time you're stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, use it as an opportunity to practice patience. Instead of cursing the delay, be grateful for the extra time to think or listen to music or simply exist without rushing. When someone is rude to you, instead of taking it personally, recognize that their behavior says nothing about you and everything about whatever pain or stress they're carrying. Respond with compassion instead of defensiveness. Show them the kind of person you choose to be regardless of how they choose to act. When plans don't work out the way you expected, instead of complaining about bad luck, ask yourself what this situation is trying to teach you. Maybe it's showing you that you were too attached to a specific outcome. Maybe it's redirecting you towards something better. Maybe it's simply reminding you that the only thing you can truly control is how you respond to what happens. The ancient Stoics had a powerful practice called negative visualization. They would spend time imagining losing the things they valued most, not to become pessimistic, but to appreciate what they currently had, and to prepare themselves emotionally for the reality that nothing lasts forever. They would imagine losing their health, their loved ones, their possessions, their reputation. This wasn't morbid thinking, it was practical preparation. They understood that if you never mentally prepare for loss, you'll be devastated when it inevitably comes. But if you've already accepted that everything in life is temporary, you can enjoy what you have while you have it without being destroyed when it's gone. This practice also reveals something profound about human nature. Most of your suffering comes not from what you don't have, but from taking for granted what you do have. You probably have access to clean water, but you don't spend much time feeling grateful for it because you've never had to live without it. You probably have people who care about you, but you might focus more on the relationships you wish you had instead of appreciating the ones you do have. When you regularly remind yourself that everything good in your life is a gift that could be taken away at any moment, you naturally become more grateful, more present, and more emotionally prepared for whatever changes life brings. This doesn't mean you should live in fear of losing everything. It means you should hold everything lightly. Enjoy your successes without being defined by them. Love the people in your life without being possessive of them. Pursue your goals without being crushed if you don't achieve them exactly as planned. The Stoics called this emotional detachment, but they didn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. They meant developing the ability to engage fully with life while maintaining inner stability. They could love deeply without being destroyed by loss. They could work hard toward their goals without being devastated by failure. They could enjoy success without becoming arrogant or entitled. This balance between engagement and detachment is one of the most sophisticated emotional skills you can develop. It allows you to care about things that matter while maintaining perspective about what really matters. It lets you feel your emotions fully without being controlled by them. Most people live at one extreme or the other. Either they care so much about everything that they're constantly anxious and overwhelmed, or they protect themselves by not caring about anything, which leads to emptiness and disconnection. The Stoic path is the middle way between these extremes. You care deeply about your values, your character, your relationships, and your contribution to the world. But you hold outcomes lightly because you understand that results are only partially within your control. You focus your energy on what you can influence and accept what you cannot change. This isn't passive resignation. This is strategic wisdom. When you stop wasting energy fighting against things you can't control, you have more energy available for the things you can control. When you stop being emotionally reactive to every setback, you can think more clearly about how to respond effectively. The Stoics discovered that true power comes not from controlling your environment, but from mastering your responses to your environment. You can't control what happens to you, but you can control what happens in you. You can't dictate other people's behavior, but you can choose your own. You can't eliminate all problems from your life, but you can develop the strength to handle whatever problems arise. This is the foundation-shakable confidence of UN. Not the fake confidence that comes from having everything go your way, but the real confidence that comes from knowing you can handle whatever doesn't go your way. This is what separates those who thrive under pressure from those who crumble when things get difficult. But let me tell you something that most people don't understand about emotions. Your feelings are not facts. They're not accurate reports about reality. They're just chemical reactions in your body triggered by your thoughts. When you realize this, everything changes. Most people treat their emotions like gospel truth. If they feel anxious, they assume there must be something to worry about. If they feel angry, they assume someone has wronged them. If they feel sad, they assume something terrible has happened. But emotions are just information, and often that information is completely wrong. Your brain is constantly making predictions about what's going to happen based on limited information. When it predicts danger, you feel fear. When it predicts loss, you feel sadness. When it predicts threat, you feel anger. But these predictions are often based on outdated patterns, incomplete data, or worst-case scenarios that will never actually happen. The Stoics understood this thousands of years before modern neuroscience proved it. They knew that emotions are generated by judgments, not by events. Change your judgment, change your emotion, master your judgments, master your emotional life. This is why two people can look at the same situation and have completely different emotional responses. One person sees a challenge as exciting, the other sees it as terrifying. One person views criticism as helpful feedback, the other takes it as a personal attack. Same situation, different judgments, different emotions. Here's what this means for your daily life. You don't have to be a victim of your moods anymore. You don't have to let anxiety control your decisions or anger dictate your actions. You can learn to observe your emotions without being controlled by them. When you feel a strong emotion rising, pause. Take a breath. Ask yourself what judgment you're making that's creating this feeling. Is that judgment actually true? Is it helpful? Is it based on facts or assumptions? Are you responding to what's actually happening or to what you imagine might happen? This isn't about suppressing your emotions or pretending they don't exist. This is about developing emotional intelligence. It's about becoming the CEO of your own inner world instead of being at the mercy of every passing feeling. The ancient Stoics had a practice called the view from above. When they felt overwhelmed by their problems, they would imagine zooming out and looking at their situation from a cosmic perspective. They would picture themselves from space, seeing their tiny place in the vast universe, their brief moment in the long span of history. This practice wasn't meant to make them feel insignificant. It was meant to give them perspective. Most of the things we worry about, most of the things that trigger our emotions are incredibly small when viewed from a larger perspective. That argument with your spouse, that mistake you made at work, that embarrassing thing you said last week, none of it matters as much as your emotions are telling you it matters. This doesn't mean your problems aren't real or that you shouldn't address them. It means you can address them from a place of calm wisdom instead of emotional reactivity. When you're not overwhelmed by the intensity of your emotions, you can think more clearly about solutions. But here's where most people struggle with this concept. They think that caring less means they're giving up or becoming lazy. This is completely wrong. The Stoics cared deeply about many things. They just didn't let their caring turn into suffering. Marcus Aurelius cared deeply about being a good emperor. Epictetus cared deeply about teaching wisdom. Seneca cared deeply about philosophy and friendship. But they didn't tie their emotional well-being to outcomes they couldn't fully control. You can work hard toward your goals while accepting that you might not achieve them exactly as planned. You can love someone deeply while accepting that you can't control their choices. You can care about justice while accepting that the world isn't always fair. This is emotional maturity. Most people think that if they don't worry about something, they don't really care about it. But worry is not care. Worry is fear dressed up as concern. Real care shows up as thoughtful action, not anxious rumination. When you truly care about something, you focus on what you can actually do to help, not on imagining all the ways things could go wrong. You prepare for challenges without obsessing over them. You take responsibility for your part without trying to control things that aren't your responsibility. This shift in perspective transforms everything. Instead of waking up wondering what problems the day might bring, you wake up curious about what opportunities for growth you'll encounter. Instead of dreading challenges, you see them as chances to practice virtue. Instead of being frustrated by obstacles, you view them as training equipment for building strength. The Stoics had a beautiful concept called amor fati, which means love of fate. They didn't just accept what happened to them, they embraced it. They understood that everything that happens to you, good or bad, is raw material you can use to build character and wisdom. This doesn't mean you should love suffering or seek out pain. It means you can find value in every experience, even the difficult ones. Especially the difficult ones. Easy times don't build character. Comfort doesn't create strength. Challenges do. When you adopt this mindset, you become almost invincible emotionally. You're not hoping for a life without problems because you know that's impossible. Instead, you're confident in your ability to handle whatever problems arise. You're not trying to avoid all pain because you understand that growth requires discomfort. This is what real resilience looks like. Not the ability to bounce back from setbacks, but the ability to find opportunity in every setback. Not the capacity to avoid all stress, but the wisdom to transform stress into strength. Think about the strongest people you know. They're not the ones who've had the easiest lives. They're the ones who've faced difficulties and learned from them. They've been tested by life and discovered they're stronger than they thought. They've developed the kind of confidence that can only come from surviving storms. You have this same potential inside you. Every challenge you've already overcome is proof of your strength. Every setback you've survived is evidence of your resilience. Every mistake you've learned from is a building block in your character. The Stoics believed that every person has the potential for wisdom and virtue, regardless of their circumstances. Epictetus went from being a slave to becoming one of the most respected teachers in Rome. Marcus Aurelius balanced the responsibilities of ruling an empire with the pursuit of philosophical wisdom. Seneca maintained his principles even when facing execution. Their external circumstances were vastly different, but they all developed the same internal strength. They all learned to control their reactions instead of being controlled by their circumstances. They all discovered that true power comes from mastering yourself, not from controlling others. This is the path that's available to you right now. You don't need to wait for your circumstances to improve. You don't need permission from anyone else. You don't need special talents or advantages. You just need to start practicing control over your own responses. Start today. Start with the next thing that happens to you. Whatever it is, pause before you react. Ask yourself how the wisest version of yourself would handle this situation. Choose your response instead of defaulting to your automatic reaction. This is how transformation begins. Not with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but with small moments of choice. Every time you choose wisdom over emotion, strength over weakness, response over reaction, you're building the kind of character that can handle anything life throws at you. The ancient Stoics knew something that most modern people have forgotten. External circumstances are temporary, but the strength you build by facing them is permanent. Problems come and go, but the wisdom you gain from solving them stays with you forever. People may disappoint you, but the character you develop by responding with grace makes you stronger. This is why the Stoics weren't afraid of difficulties. They knew that every challenge was an opportunity to become more than they were before. They understood that the obstacles in their path weren't preventing them from reaching their destination. They were the path to their destination. Your current challenges aren't accidents or punishments. They're precisely what you need to develop the strength you're meant to have. The person who never faces adversity never develops resilience. The person who never encounters criticism never learns confidence. The person who never experiences loss never appreciates what they have. Life isn't testing you to break you down. It's training you to build you up. Every person who has ever achieved something meaningful has had to develop the ability to stay focused on their goals despite temporary setbacks. Every leader who has ever inspired others has learned to remain calm under pressure. Every individual who has ever lived with genuine confidence has mastered the art of responding rather than reacting. You're not different from these people. You're not lacking some special gene or missing some crucial advantage. You simply haven't developed the habits of mental discipline that transform ordinary people into extraordinary ones. But that changes starting right now. Here's what most people don't understand about building mental strength. It's not about having perfect control over your thoughts and emotions all the time. It's about catching yourself when you slip into old patterns and consciously choosing a better response. It's about progress, not perfection. The Stoics called this the discipline of will. Every moment presents you with a choice between your higher self and your lower self. Your higher self is patient, wise, and focused on long-term growth. Your lower self is impulsive, reactive, and focused on immediate gratification. Most people let their lower self drive most of the time because it's easier in the moment. But easy choices create a hard life. Hard choices create an easy life. When you consistently choose the harder path of pausing, thinking, and responding wisely, you build psychological muscle that makes everything else easier. When you consistently take the easy path of reacting automatically, you build weakness that makes everything else harder. Think about someone you know who always seems calm and collected. They weren't born that way. They developed that quality through thousands of small choices to remain centered instead of getting pulled into drama. They practice staying focused on solutions instead of dwelling on problems. They train themselves to see opportunities where others see only obstacles. You can develop these same qualities, but only if you're willing to do the work. And the work isn't complicated. It's simply the daily practice of conscious choice. Every time something happens that would normally trigger an automatic reaction, you pause. You breathe. You ask yourself what response would serve you best in this moment. This might sound simple, but simple isn't the same as easy. Your brain has been running automatic programs for years, maybe decades. These programs were designed to keep you safe in a dangerous world, but most of them are outdated and counterproductive in modern life. Your brain still thinks that being criticized is a threat to your survival, so it triggers fight or flight responses that made sense when humans lived in small tribes but create problems in office environments. Your brain still thinks that uncertainty means danger, so it creates anxiety about changes that are actually opportunities for growth. The good news is that your brain is incredibly adaptable. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity. Your brain continues to form new neural pathways throughout your entire life based on how you think and act. Every time you choose a wise response over an automatic reaction, you're literally rewiring your brain for strength. But here's what separates people who actually change from people who just think about changing. The people who transform their lives understand that growth happens in moments of resistance. When you feel the urge to react emotionally and you choose to respond thoughtfully instead, that's when you're building real strength. Most people avoid these moments. They try to arrange their lives to minimize stress and conflict. They surround themselves with people who never challenge them. They stick to familiar routines that never push their comfort zones. Then they wonder why they feel weak and unprepared when life inevitably presents them with difficulties. The choice is yours, warrior. You can continue living as a prisoner to your reactions, letting every email, every traffic jam, every criticism knock you off balance like you're made of paper. Or you can start building the unshakable foundation that transforms you into someone who moves through chaos with calm power. The ancient Stoics gave you the blueprint. Masters like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus proved it works. Now it's time for you to prove it to yourself. Your reactions are your responsibility. Your responses are your power. Your life is waiting for you to take control. Drop this final declaration in the comments. I am the master of my reactions. I am the architect of my life. And remember, every moment is a new opportunity to choose strength over weakness, wisdom over impulse, power over powerlessness. The question isn't whether you can do this. The question is whether you will.